What it is, people of YouTube. Welcome back. Yes, back to the 2023 edition of your girlfriend's worst nightmare. It's so good to be back and back with a bang, you know what I'm saying? And we got, I always call people legends, but, I think that a legend is one that deserves the status. And if there's one person that truly deserves the status, it's the man in front of me today, S'bonelo Phunugla. Sponjo, how are you doing today, brother?
Of course, my brother. Just want to say a big thank you, man. Thank you for having me here. Been looking forward to this for a long time. We've had conversations about today for a minute. And I think our last phone call, I think it was like a 3-hour phone call.
Yo, that was a deep one. that should have actually been the podcast.
Yeah, we literally should have recorded that episode. Yeah. But, yes, man, like the conversations we have are so unique and authentic.
100%.
And I'm keen to finally record on them.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think as much as, I've been on this wavelength of like the tyranny of numbers and how like a lot of people think that, the only people that I should speak to are people that have a lot of numbers behind them in terms of following. But I think that it's also great to speak to people before they get all those numbers because, after this one, I'm not going to be surprised if there's going to be a couple of hands inside those DMs.
No,
sorry. But anyways, for those of you who don't know, S'bonelo and I are pretty much brothers at this point. Met at the infamous Hilton, but we'll get to that. And I think that the best way for us to start, I always like to do a bit of an icebreaker. And I like to I was kind of doing some research not so long ago, and I was thinking about the best way for us to speak and navigate this conversation. I think the best way is probably just to speak about 5 laws by some of the greatest minds. And before we get to those 5 laws, I wanted to ask if, which law actually kind of speaks to you. So I'll start with the 5 laws. So we've got Murphy's Law, which is the more you fear something, the more it'll happen. Okay? We've got a guy called Kidlin's Law, which is if you can write down the problem clearly, then the matter is half solved. Okay? The 3rd law is Gilbert's Law, which is the biggest problem at work is that nobody tells you what to do.
Sure. Okay.
We've got Lawson's Law, which is if you always put information and intelligence first, then money will keep coming. And then we finally got Falkland's Law, which is when you don't have to make a decision, then don't make a decision.
Wow. So the 5th law.
Which one do you think is most relatable to you?
Can you repeat law 2 and 3? But I want to chat on 5.
Okay. So law 2 is Kidlin's Law, which is if you can write down the problem clearly, then the matter is half solved. And you said the 5th law.
And the 3rd law?
The 3rd law is Gilbert's Law, which is the biggest problem at work is that nobody tells you what to do.
The 2nd law is the most important law. Being able to articulate your issues and being able to put them down because you can solve them. I think that, for me, is the most practical way to solve any issue. Is if you can actually see and imagine the problem, then you're halfway to solving it. You know
100%.
what I mean? And if you don't see it, if you're unable to physically see what you're dealing with. I mean, I was listening to a podcast now, we'll get into that later, but there's this podcast called the Grand Mid Podcast. He's a big investor in the States, very young guy.
Yeah.
And part of what he says is, for example, if you have a financial issue, and you want to solve yourself financially, you need to figure out how much money you need to make in order to solve that problem.
100%.
That's a good idea of being able to see and identify, okay, my expenses are 50,000 Rand per annum. Wow, that means I need 75,000 Rand or 100,000 Rand per annum to get over my expenses and, have some money for myself. You need to be able to identify and see the actual issue. So, as accordance to that law, writing it down is a good way to get there. I think the 5th law is really good as well because it's a Stoic principle. Actually, I'm a big fan of the Stoic philosophy. If you guys don't know what the Stoic philosophy is, please look it up. Big philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, which I hopefully can chat about now. But they also say that if you don't have to make a decision, don't make a decision. If you don't have to have an opinion, don't have an opinion. We live in an opinionated society, and sometimes, you don't have to have a thought on that. It doesn't have to occupy a piece of your mind if it isn't relative to you and the life you're living. So it's a very interesting principle that I'm still diving into, and that resonated with me. But for Long answer short, I'd say the second law is.
Alrighty. No, I love that. And I think the Stoicism thing is sort of the top G movement.
It's a top G movement. Top G.
Anyway, don't want to get cancelled. I don't want to get cancelled. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that. And I think it just really does now, you know, as a law itself, kind of now turning towards a very important part of this podcast, which is the introduction. You know, I think it's always very important, and I tend to always believe, and I get this from Stephen Bartlett, that you know, our earliest childhood, Sarah, Diary of a CEO, absolutely impeccable podcast, but our earliest years always have such a major impact into who we are today. And so, you know, for me, I want to ask you, under the age of 10, what was your defining moment?
Sure. Yeah, man. A lot of memories from a young age. Yeah, you know. A lot of people know my story, maybe some people don't, but an interesting childhood growing up. I had two very traditional parents, both from KZN. I'm Zulu in blood. Shout out to the Zulus, the kingdom. But Zulu background, and my parents moved here in the 90s to find work. Yeah, my parents moved to a place called Meadowfields in Buccleuch. Yeah, to find work, better pastures. You know, Joburg was the place to be at the time. Fun fact, I think it was the second night. I'll check with my brother, but you know, when my brother was born, he was born there. And my parents didn't have a bed. I think they slept on the floor for 2 to 4 weeks, just trying to find, trying to make a name for themselves here. So people in pursuit of something better, which is something that I found so indicative in my entire life, being in pursuit of something better. So yeah, my parents later moved to a home in Buccleuch, and that's where I was born. And I've actually still staying in that home to this day. Wow. Yeah, man, I got a younger brother as well. Shout out to my brothers. But yeah, I grew up in a very traditional home where probably the most essential value is respect. That's probably the first lesson I always remember from my dad in particular, about respecting the elders and just respecting the people in the community as well. So that was a founding value. Was disciplined from a young age, but you know, people have connotations about that, and I think to an extent that's developed me to who I am today. Yeah. So yeah, the fundamentalism of respect was built from a young age. Went to school called Buccleuch Primary. Shout out to Ngwako. What went to Buccleuch Primary School.
That is crazy. You went to Buccleuch Primary?
Yeah, and we might have been at the school at the same time. So we're actually trying to find photos to see if we were there, because he went to Buccleuch, and then I don't know where he went afterwards. And he was actually at Tiggy Winkles, which is my pre-primary, my triple
Tiggy Winkles.
Tiggy Winkles, yeah.
Okay, that's kind of whack.
It's the best pre-primary. So he was at Tiggy Winkles, at pre-primary. I went there, lovely place there. You know, still remember some of the teachers that taught me there. Then from there, I went to Buccleuch Primary. Yeah. And yeah, you said 10 years. That's pretty much what happened in 10 years.
Yeah. And I mean,
trying to make a name.
Yeah, I mean that trying to make a name, I think is where I'll kind of want to I head on to, is that you know, what was the life experience that you can kind of go back to that in many ways defined the way you live your life today.
Sure. I think, man, it's so interesting, but humility was instilled in me unconditionally. Because of the way I grew up. Sure. Not as a value that, you know, be humble. But, man, this is a real podcast, you know. Don't eat too many eggs in the fridge because we're going to run out. You know, watch, you know, your portions. Because we didn't have it all growing up. I'm going to be honest, something I don't say a lot, I don't like to talk about. But we didn't have a lot growing up. And that instilled a level of humility in me, which now I see the benefits of. You know, we live in such an indulging world, and a world of frivolousness and get as much as you can get, but we learned how to survive with what we had. And that has helped me to be a poised individual who understands how much I need, how much I need to get by. And that is fed to characteristics in me I believe I have, like perseverance, being able to not have much and get through, being able to push through things. Because, you know, as a kid growing up, all the kids got the sweets and stuff and, you know, had a particular life. But humility taught me from a young age to take full advantage of what I had. And I still carry that to this day.
That's so beautiful, eh? Yeah, and humility is a powerful thing, eh? Yeah, and it's something that I think, I see it in my brother, but who, you know, unfortunately, because he's been raised in such a privileged environment, it can be something that's very lost in as a young age. And you don't, and it's important to learn something like that at a very early age, you know? I think for me, I kind of, my parents had a bit of a balance also, you know, in terms of like, as much as we did have a privileged life, they also made me realize that there are some people that don't live the way we live. Exactly. You know, because when you're young, you think everybody lives like you know, you guys always got the same problems, but the reality is that when you go home, it's completely different.
It's a privilege to live in that way.
100%.
You know, I watched the video the other day. I don't know who the person was, but they were just chatting about how to raise children. And in many instances, moms and dads, a child runs into an issue. Hey, mom, I've got this issue. Please, can you help me fix it? And the mom says, no problem, my boy, or no problem, my girl. Let me fix it for you. Or you've broken your toy. Let me fix it for you. What this person said in this video is that the most important lesson you can give your child is teaching them how to solve their own problems.
Sure.
Because inevitably, you won't be there to solve all their problems for them. So if you're teaching them from a young age that, hey, mommy can help you, daddy can help you, they will not be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And unfortunately, I see that with, you know, peers and, you know, people who've walked life with today, is that when push comes to shove and the weight is on your shoulders, you can't handle it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons my parents taught me from a young age, is being able to solve your own problems. In that video, this person he gave an example of a kid breaks a toy and the dad says, I don't know how to fix it. Try and fix it. And the kid picks up this toy, picks up the wheel, and is adjusting the wheel on the toy, trying to put the wheel in.
Yeah.
And eventually they click. And the dad says, that's how you fix it. Sure. And I think you have no idea how much power you're giving your children by teaching them how to take care of themselves.
Jeez.
Because eventually they will have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, from a young age, we had to do that at home. We had to clean. I mean, you know, shout out to Siskoni. She is our helper. But from a young age, from like 1 to I think 4, 5, we couldn't do anything. But from the ages of 5 to pretty much to this day, we haven't had help at home. We can clean the entire place. We can make sure the entire place is good. We can cook. Our parents taught us to take care of ourselves because they understood that one day we'd need to do that. And I'm so blessed with that.
Yeah.
So
sure.
So
wow. Yeah. That is impeccable. And I mean, it even goes to kind of the next point, which is, you know, of course, because you were living in an environment where you had to fend for yourself and earn, you know, your status per se. What impact did that have in kind of the way you were understood in school? Because I think for me, I mean, when I went to school, I was very much so, I wasn't separated from the genders, you know. I think there was, especially in the earliest years, I had a lot of people saying that, you know, we're gonna chill with the guys and the girls are gonna chill with the girls. But I used to be the guy, you know, let's go to the girls, let's go to the guys, let's go to the weird people, the cool people, whatever. And so that was really misunderstood to say like, why is this guy mixing? Why is he like a squad hopper? You know what I'm trying to say? So for you coming from that household, what do you think was kind of misunderstood growing up?
You know, I think for me, at a young age, I didn't have to deal with it because I was schooling with people who were in a similar class to I was.
I see.
Especially at Buccleuch Primary, you know, working class individuals there. But shout out to my parents who, and I'm so excited to touch on this later, but who ultimately believed in me and saw something in me I didn't even see in myself. Sure. So at a young age, I didn't have to deal with that. But when I got to, you know, St. Peter's, I went to St. Peter's in grade 2 at Witkopen Road in Polshof.
Oh, laka.
My parents made that decision to take me there. And that adjustment was also interesting. It was a bit segregational. You know, I remember being in school and, we'd have school and school would finish and then I'd be in the car park, until late, maybe sometimes at night because mom and dad had to go to work and then to come pick me up or, all there were those kids that were at school until late because their parents had to work before they could come pick them up. I remember in school, we didn't have enough cash to get that lift club. Those like little lift clubs at school where
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Where like they'd pay like a lifting company and they'd pick up all the kids. And
yes.
Small advantages like those we didn't have.
Yeah.
So that's why I saw the separation. Okay, these are them and this is me. But it's part of the story. It really is part of the story. But I wouldn't say that, because of where I came from and my background necessarily people were like, you're a bad person or you don't have much. It was never something really big until we went into high school and that started becoming a bit more prevalent.
Yeah.
But funny enough, to my advantage.
Yeah. And then that's kind of, it relays nicely into Hilton, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Massive shift in environment, massive shift in way of life. And I guess just on that, I mean, how did we meet? I mean, I remember I arrived at Hilton and I got there. I didn't know absolutely anybody. And S'bonelo, this is what this nigga does. So I think we're not staying in our original boarding house because our boarding house is getting renovated. And we decided, okay, we're gonna go to Old Pierce. So that was the name of our temporary boarding house. Get there, I'm pretty nervous. My gran is there, my mother's there. My mother was pretty ruthless in the way she left me, and my dad. It's more like a thing of like,
man.
All right, cheers, you're on your own, peace. Oh shit, reality just hit, bro. And got there, got inside, walked in, obviously I was sleeping next to Cam Coley. Shout out to him. He's going to be part of the blog soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yes.
And I think the beautiful thing about that moment is that when we met, it was kind of a thing of like, bro, like, who the fuck are you? And I was like, oh, okay.
What's so funny about this?
Because he was a St. Peter's guy, but it is, yeah?
What's so funny is that we met before Hilton. I used to play in basketball.
Yes, and we used to whip this guy's team. Used to whip them, with our giant. We had one giant. Shout out, his name was Ubani Matala. We used to absolutely whip them. St. Peter's was so trash at basketball. We tried. Yeah.
We had some decent intentions.
Yeah. And then, I mean, like, so what were your kind of first impressions of kind of the Hilton experience and kind of reflecting on it? How was the Hilton experience for you? For those who don't know, I mean, Hilton is it's an exclusive place. There's only a small percentage of people that have the privilege to say they've gone through the entire system.
Yeah, man.
And so, you did. And how was that shift, from where you've come from into this, wealth-infested environment?
Yeah. Man, first things first, I'm going to say it right now. Glory to God, man, for making that possible.
100%.
Because, my trajectory didn't match the destination.
Sure.
It just didn't. My Hilton came to St. Peter's to do like a marketing campaign, and I remember my class came the day before.
Okay.
And they came to do a presentation or whatever, and Hilton came the next day. And from a young age, I don't know what it is, but I've had a strong sense of what my inside is saying. I've had a strong connection to my conscience.
That kind of feeling,
That feeling is so identifiable in my mind and my heart. I remember Hilton came and they had this speech, just recording old Hiltonian quotes, and I went home that day. I'm like, Mom, I know this is the school I'm meant to go to. I know. My mom knew this is a very expensive school. School fees are crazy. But she was like, okay, we're going to do it. Hilton College was the only high school I applied to go to. I didn't apply to go anywhere else.
Whoa.
I was that convinced that this place is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah.
This is going to lead to your answer. But, we had to do a lot. Shout out to my dad. He actually had to sell his bakkie to pay for the entrance fee to get into the school. My dad didn't have a car. I think it was for grade 8 and for grade 9, if I'm correct. Yeah, man. Yeah. They did a lot. And yeah, when I went to Hilton, I went with a purpose. I remember my dad saying that, I remember actually pulling in and seeing all these Land Rovers and all these big cars.
Yeah.
we pull up in a VW Touran, a 2006 version. You know, the amount of times that car's been in service is crazy. But my dad was like, you got a purpose and you're here for a reason. And you know, like these kids are trying to find themselves, but you're here for a reason. You're here to uplift yourself, uplift the family, and push the name forward. So I went into Hilton with that mentality, in all honesty. You know, it might have been covered by the apparently arrogant S'bonelo that I was, you know, walking in.
100%.
But deep down I knew that there's a reason why I'm here, and this is the beginning of changing the course of my family's history.
And it comes with a lot of pressure, though. You know, I mean, you first generation, of course, eh?
First
generation going into, and you come from a family that of that, and I mean, the amount of pressure that it puts on a young 14-year-old boy is insane. I mean, you've already in many ways you've experienced reality, and then you come to a space where you know that reality is, I suppose, doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's not even real. And you enter this like bubble, you know, and how is that?
It's crazy because, I mean, I relate to a lot of, you know, artists when they say this, but I'm a big fan of Kendrick Lamar, if you guys don't know, but he's like my artist. Oh,
what a legend.
And there's I forgot what bar it is in the song, but he raps about how he feels like he's 89. You know, he says, I'm in a young body, but I'm 89. And that's the type of the feeling I had when I walked into Hilton, is that I'd seen so much of life already. I'd seen poverty already. Do you know what I mean? And I mixed with people who didn't see that. And that, you know, as good as it was and as much wisdom as it gave me, you know, also did create a bit of, there was a lack of relatability between myself and my peers, because it was like, you know, they couldn't really relate to that experience. I mean, I almost had to learn to calm down, so to speak, and to like be a child in that space as well, which was really good. But it was an awesome experience. It grew me a lot. But what a blessing to go through that, because 100%. It's developed the person who I am today.
Yeah. And of course, you know, I mean, it's so true. I mean, I will never thank my parents enough for that experience, you know. And you know, my dad always says to me that, you know, Hilton is not a thing that you truly appreciate once you're out. It's only something that you'll appreciate in the 10s, 20 years to come. But I already see it in the quality of the way that I speak, you know, the way that I conduct myself. I suppose also you know, in the connections that you're able to build just on the mere fact that you went to Hilton. It's a massive privilege that it comes with that is beyond anything that anybody can ever explain. And to be able to have the privilege to go through a system like that is insane. But I know that life is balanced, you know. And I mean, you trying to prove yourself constantly surely does come with a cost. And so going through that Hilton phase, kind of what is the cost, you know? I know for me, definitely in grade 9, at the epitome of grade 9, there was a say, I think for a lot of people actually, I think even you in grade 9 was quite a tough year for you.
Man. Toughest year there.
Yeah. And I mean, for me in grade 9, I realized that I was so indoctrinated and so brainwashed by the white mentality and like and I even changed my voice and all that because I was just trying to fit in, and I kind of left my Africanacity, if you can put it like that, you know. And I think that, you know, for me it was something that I in many ways just detached from. The fact that I'm a black person, I'm a black African person, having to represent my people there. Because I think the pressure that I came with to Hilton was, you have to come and represent us, you know?
Yes.
You have to come and represent us and do well for us in many ways, and show them that we, even though we are black, we can do certain things, you know? So for you, kind of what was the balance that Hilton came with? You know, of course it comes with many privileges, but that cost, what was the cost of that experience?
I'm going to touch on that point.
Yeah.
But what I do want to touch on is I feel like the separation that came between me and home and losing that connection at home. You know, sometimes I feel like I didn't spend 5 years at home. I didn't see the development of my brothers. I didn't see, you know, my parents as well. And, you know, there's this sad feeling of jealousy in a lot of black environments, you know, that kid who, you know, takes a different path, and, you know, and I had to deal with a lot of that, in all honesty, very subliminally, you know, of where were you, you know, not in a negative way, but I don't know if you guys can relate to the experience of, being that kid who went to that school. And there are feelings of pride there and stuff like that, but it came with some difficulties, man. Coming home from that type of experience, I know people in my broader family, and people wanted that experience for themselves as well. And that innate feeling of jealousy can be apparent. But I had to learn to be empathetic with that and understand that that's not a place of negativity. That is just a pure desire to be great from them. So that was a side effect. I'm sure that people from challenged backgrounds can speak on that. Shortfalls, learning to adjust, learning to be with people who didn't think like me. Hilton, grade 9, more importantly, was a year where I was, verbally, I'll say right now, quite bullied. Did experience quite a bit of that. Sure. A big thing for me is I was 15A captain of rugby that year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of belief in me. Shout out to Mr. Dali, who had a lot of faith in me. We didn't do well that season. We lost a lot of games that season. And I understand the pressure that coaches feel when someone gets sacked or whatever in football. I really feel that, because we had a horrible season. And the amount of backlash that came from that. Why is S'bonelo captain? Like, is he equipped to lead this team? Should he be starting? Those are some of the backlashes. Yes, the privilege was there. You're representing 15As at the best school in the country, but I came with this difficulty. So there were external difficulties, as one I've spoken of before, and there were internal difficulties, the criticisms, the pressure, which is, again, for me, a blessing, because all of this is developing who I am today.
Yeah.
So it's been good.
And then you obviously then, I hear that, and I think the pressure that you acquired also came through, you also got the infamous the label as a Disney boy.
Yeah, man, let's chat about that. Let's have a conversation.
And so, like, the Disney boy mentality came through because of your deep aspiration or deep belief in the success of Africa.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, if you ask me, maybe middle of grade 9, beginning of grade 9, where it really started to kind of,
come out of
and also kind of on the basis of, can this black person really lead, a white-dominated rugby team,
Big,
big, 100%. And so, like, for me, I think, the Disney boy mentality slowly started to seep in there of, we call the Disney boys, S'bonelo and I, by the way, because we truly believed in the success of Africa and the success, and that, to whom much is given, much is expected. And, a lot of Hilton boys at the time didn't believe that you could save this place. And we still believe today that we still can, given ESCOM, and whatever.
Saving South Africa.
We're saving South Africa, and then going out even to save Africa, the rest of Africa. So, talk to me about the Disney boy mentality. Yeah. Talk to me about why and how that belief of sparking, the emancipation of the deep street boy.
Me and Kopano had a saying, back in the day, that we're doing what we're doing for the boy in Deep Sluit. And in many ways, I felt like that kid from a young age, a child with no opportunities to do well. And I'm, again, appreciative of my parents that with no money did what they could to give me that experience. And we've tried to develop that and make sure that more kids from those type of backgrounds can succeed. And in the last conversation we had, we spoke about mental slavery. There's someone that I read a lot. His name is Marcus Garvey, and he was an African politician in the States, and he spoke about mental slavery and about how the poverty experienced by black people has encroached on our thinking, has limited our thinking.
Sure. And
and I chat about the double-edged sword of humility. There's humility which is good, which, is a filter for appreciation, but there's a humility that seeps into the undermining of man. And I feel like as Africans for a long time, we've been so used to, not getting much that we've with a lot of aspirations. I think being in Hilton in grade 9 and starting to see, you know, signs of segregation culturally, etc., really inspired me to do something bigger than just study and to push the black man forward. Because, I mean, we're all first generations of people that haven't experienced apartheid, but, you know, the layers are still seeping under and continuing today. And for me, it's my mandate to really try, you know, force equity and a spirit of equality for the black individual, because, you know, we're mentally slaves to things we think we cannot achieve because of our past. And the whole Disney thing comes about us saying, hey, in fact, you can achieve that. You can come from deep sluits, you know, come from the slummiest schools, and you can rise up. You know, you can take on the bull by its horns. And every black child needs to hear that, because we're mentally slaves to our past. And the only way we break through from those things is accepting and digesting the fact that there can be more for us as a people. And it's a blessing to go to these schools, because it was the first time in my life where I saw that, hey, something is actually possible. We can take this direction. Yeah. So Disney is inspiration.
Yeah, 100%.
Inspiring black young kids to go higher.
Amen.
Yeah.
Damn. No, you're so right, eh? Amen to that. And the upheaval of the deep sleuth boy and the girl.
Yeah, the girl.
You know, and every individual that, you know, we just kind of use it as a motif, but it's a beautiful thing that you're saying. And I think that I hope and I pray that there are more people like us. And, you know, I think that just before we end off the Hilton chat, you know, we obviously went to Hilton Michaelhouse.
Yeah, last year.
Hilton Michaelhouse, for those you don't know, is like a big event. Probably one of the biggest in the world.
You like to believe, yeah.
And, you know, it obviously has a lot of, you know, it's against our rival school, Michaelhouse, and it's a rugby day. And one thing that hit me quite badly during that time was the idea of niggas moving different. You know? And I hear this, you know, I hear the Disney,
deep, man.
I hear the Disney boy chat. But I also feel like, you know, I forgot what you said. There was a time that we spoke and you said something about, you know, when you get to a certain age, you stop to believe in the Disney boy mentality. And in many ways, I feel like there's been this like kind of separation in terms of, you know, the Disney boys sticking to that route and those that are just like, you know what, I'm going to go make some rack. Fuck all of y'all. And yeah, this is where we're going. And I think for me, like, yeah, I wanted to get your opinion on like the whole idea of our motif for that experience was niggas move mad.
Yeah, because there's a conflict in that 100%, idea. Like and there were people who originally started with that mindset that deviated from it, right? And one for me comes down to, and man, this is, you know, so, you know, philosophical, and, you know, if you read African literature, you can relate, but like the abandonment of the mission, you know, if you read the books of Marcus Garvey, you know, what Marcus Garvey aimed to do was to take African Americans out of Africa and put them into Africa, so that Africa can be a united African state, and that we can, you know, propel the continent forward. Because he couldn't understand why Africans were in were in the United States of America working as slaves, when the whole African race could actually come together in Africa and push things forward. So those are his thoughts there. But I want you guys to listen to a song. It's called "Mortal Man" by Kendrick Lamar.
Ooh, okay.
It's the last song on the album "To Pimp a Butterfly," 2015 release. And there's a section of the song at the end of the song where Kendrick Lamar's interviewing Tupac, you know, a big rapper from back in the day. Tupac says something so interesting. He says, you know, by the time most people hit 30, or most black individuals hit 30, they lose all the fire in them. They lose all the juice to keep, you know, pushing this mission forward. They quote unquote abandon the mission. And they start, you know, chasing the bag. And it's interesting because we had a similar conversation in the car right now, is that, you know, there needs to be a purpose behind your monetary drive. There needs to be value you're providing. And I think it's a fatigue, you know, that a lot of African individuals, you know, go through. I've been fighting so long. you know, we've been through the struggle for so long. I'm going to take care of myself. Like, I can't really take care of anybody else. I'm going to take care of myself. And I think that it's that fatigue that has drawn the line because, people get to the age where they aren't inspired by anyone else other than themselves.
Sure.
Which is, I think, interesting in the developmental stages of your life. If you come from nothing, it's very important to, as for example, when the plane is crashing, to put your mask on first before you put the mask on of the passenger. That is a plane crash protocol. And that's very metaphorical for how life is. Yeah. Put your mask on first. But at the end of the day, guys, let's not forget about putting on the mask of the person next to us.
100%.
And I think that because of the fatigue of people and because the black man is like, you know what, screw you guys, I'm going on my own way. We forget to put the mask on the other person. And I think in the grander scheme of things, we got to realize that once we are free, it's our obligation to free other people because that is meaningful. That is valuable. I don't want to get to age 120, Lord, please, age 120 and say, yo, I've built awesome businesses, I've got beautiful property, but I haven't changed the life of a single individual.
Sure.
I don't want to live with that. I think it's important for, you know, black and even other races to build someone else other than yourself because that gives your life meaning and that's a worthy pursuit.
Sure.
So,
amen.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Sure, that's deep. You're so right. And then you go on to Tux, and you rightfully so walk in the direction of trying to solve, Africa's greatest problems, and you do that through the law. But of course, like everything in life is balanced, and so what is the facade that was given to you versus kind of going in and out, you know, before we get to 2022, which was a grueling year for you, but why did you decide to go into law and did the university system within itself live up to your expectations?
Sure. Why did I decide to go into law and did the university live up to the expectations? Brilliant. Man, I remember, you know, shout out to Z.
It's a one-day Penyani, that is.
One-day Penyani.
Yes, sir.
He was instrumental in my thoughts from a young age. I remember sitting in the cop shop. For you guys who don't know, it's a matric chilling area we used to chill in, and he'd play me, you know, black consciousness music and music that brought attention to, you know, issues of the black man. And for me, law is an instrumental step in being able to change that. I think the moment I truly decided that this is something I want to do was when we went to, we had a training day, we had a work week when you came to Joburg in grade 11 to see a bunch of businesses, how they operate, and we went to these chambers. Chambers is where they house advocates, and advocates do their work, and an advocate came up and he spoke and he said, you know, if you truly want to make a tangible impact on the world and on the country, if you truly feel inside, you know, a desire to actually make change, then look into law. At the time, the land reform, why am I forgetting the term? Expropriation or compensation was a big conversation. Julius Malema was on about that. And that was a big conversation we had there. And these were lawyers that were handling those type of issues, those type of questions. You know, shout out to advocates Temba and Toby. I read his book. If you guys please can, The Land Is Ours. Very powerful book about how, you know, land was almost stolen from the black man. We look at the Native Lands Act, 1904, I think. And history tells us that, you know, we once had wealth, but now we don't. But to rearrange that process and to redistribute, which is a very touchy conversation, I know, was a big factor for me. But how can we redistribute and how can we solve the problems that previously were and still are because of apartheid? And the lawyers, spoke, and they said, you know what, if you want to make a change in the world, on paper, do law. And I remember that was a powerful message for me. And just to conclude that thought, the advocate asked us, can any one of you guys recite the plaque on the driveway of the Hilton gates? There's a plaque written by the 2007 chairman, and the plaque says, enter these gates with humility, determined to contribute to and to take all that this institution offers, and depart knowing that you are well equipped to forge your future in the world. And when I left Hilton, I left with that mentality that I'm equipped now to forge my future in the world and to forge the freedom of people that look like me. And law is, ideologically and soon practically an awesome way to do that. Did the university live up to my expectations? No. hey. Respectfully, but I think there's a lot of sort of issues there's a lot of educational issues we can solve in law. Law's a different language. I was chatting to someone yesterday and said, law's a completely different language that you must learn. And I think that, learning that language can be better facilitated. You look at schools like Oxford, Cambridge, top schools where the support systems are a lot stronger and the participation of tutors, helping students to be able to learn is really, really strong. And I feel like, you go into university, and this is what I call the socio-economic factor of student success. I actually want to write about this one day. But depending on where you come from, your financial situations, etc., that will dictate your performance in school. Because the average South African, when they walk into university, with outside the homage and the protection of school, have to think about where they're going to stay, have to think about what they're going to eat, have to think about buying textbooks, etc., all these additional costs. And the average South African is coming from a family that cannot afford all those expenses. So those expenses seep onto the student themselves. And you compare a student that has gone to great schools and has parents that are willing and able to provide for those expenses, there starts to become a discrepancy between who can do better and who can't. Because if I don't have to work a part-time job because my parents are paying for my school fees, my textbooks are paid for, all I have to do is to be a student. I've got more time to study. But if I don't come from a great background, I have to work to put food on, quite literally put food on the table, pay for electricity, etc. I don't have the means to expend as much energy into my studies as a second individual, which means I don't graduate as well, which means the person that graduated as well gets the job, and I don't get the job because I'm dealing with these issues. So I don't get the job, and I must do vocational work, but I'm not doing work to push forward my family, to push forward the race, for example. So there's a socio-economic factor to how people perform in life, and that is perpetuating black struggle. Because now if I can't get good enough marks, I can't get into that school. I can't get into that company, for example. If I can't get into that company, I can't earn enough to get my family out of the rut.
100%.
So I must now go back to the...
It's just a continuous cycle.
Continuous cycle.
Sheesh.
There's a socio-economic factor to how students do it. I think, schools like Oxford and Cambridge, etc., they have an understanding of that outside what we're teaching you, the other responsibilities. And schools like that try to cater and cover for those responsibilities as best as they can. And I think in South Africa, that's an issue we have because there's so much more that goes on outside the classroom that it's just not spoken about.
Sure.
I think we need to play a role in speaking about that. Guys, this is real talk, hey? And I know some of these conversations, some of these topics are going to offend some listeners, but some might even stop listening.
100%.
But this is real.
Yeah. But I mean, you speak about the socioeconomic and the balance, I suppose, that life has. You see that Tandeka, who's done so well at studying medicine, but you don't realize that she has a part-time job, struggling to put food on her table, and the struggles that's also going on at home. But home is also a very interesting place in your life. Yeah. I think 2022 was an interesting process for you. So take us through why 2022 was so tough, and how going through the motions during this time. You've obviously had two very interesting phenomena that kind of, I wouldn't say correlate, but kind of had major success and major grief, you know, in many ways. And so I don't know if that is the forces of life. I don't know how we can explain, you know, those type of phenomena. But take us through what people don't see behind the success of law, the success that you had at Hilton, the man that you've become. But what is the countering force that 2022 brought to you?
Sure. 2022 was a tough year for me. It was a year where I had to become a man. It was the year that marked for me the transition of being a boy and transferring to a man, and the blessing of my past and the blessing of growing up the way I grew up helped, because I learned how to do life on my own from a very young age. And that came with difficulties as well. To start the beginning of the 2022, I had to, work part-time jobs, which is not a new thing. Students do that, and had quite a lot of monetary responsibilities from in that year, and that affected the way I could perform academically. But a big sort of challenge, probably the toughest challenge I think I've had to deal with, is accepting the loss of my mother. I lost my mother on the 3rd of October 2022 to heart valve disease. My mother, she grew up with rheumatic fever. It was quite an intense fever. For many nights she slept on the floor. Didn't have a bed to sleep on, and that exposed her heart to quite harsh elements. She struggled with health issues from quite a young age. In 2010, she got very sick, and the doctors basically found out that her valves in her heart were shrinking. And valves control the intake and the input and output of blood into the heart, and the valves were shrinking, malfunctioning, etc. And that's to perform an operation to replace those valves, heart valve operation. I think it's the aortic valve replacement surgery. That's to perform that in 2010. They performed that in 2010, and the doctors finished the operation, and she didn't wake up for quite a long period of time. Doctors, they try to shock her, get her back. Doctors were quite convinced that she was going to wake up, and remarkably and miraculously, after a couple of minutes, I'll try to record the time and let you guys know. I think, I stand to be corrected, I think it was 25 to 30 minutes, I think.
She was announced dead.
She was gone.
Sheesh, that's crazy.
And she woke up. That was a big miracle. I remember just hearing stories of my aunties and uncles praying outside the hospital room, and her prayer was. And I remember driving. We were driving to the surgery room, and her prayer was, "God, please allow me to raise my children. Please allow me to, raise them." And I think that her recovery there was an answer from God, because if she didn't do that, she wouldn't be able to raise us, and she did. Get to 2022, and we realize that we need to again replace these valves. The valves are not working. They said the last for 15 years. We got to year 12, they weren't working. So after some time, after doctors doing tests, etc., they realized that they needed to do the operation again. It's quite a shock to all of us, because we had a lot of trauma coming out of the first operation, and we had to do the operation again. Again, an intense time of prayer that the operation went well. Thank God. But she recovered from that operation, and things were temporarily successful. A lot more complications came from that, and her her pancreas was malfunctioning. You know, it wasn't working too well, and her gallbladder actually was not working too well, was not operating too well, and had to perform an emergency operation to remove the gallbladder and also to again attend to the heart because there were some issues with the heart. These are two operations being performed in a matter of, I think, a week apart. Jeez. So a lot of pressure on the body. And the last operation was on the gallbladder. The body took too much hits, considering 2010, you know, and I think 3 operations in 2022. The body took many hits. And she was in and out of consciousness, pretty much didn't wake up from consciousness after the last operation, the removal of the gallbladder. She was under ventilation as she was, you know, previously. Doctors trying their best to keep her alive. Eventually the liver failed, the kidneys failed, so she couldn't even urinate. They had to regulate that process. And after, you know, multiple organ failures, blood into the brain, and she passed away like that. So, yeah, 3:15, 3rd of October 2022, I lost my mother. She's been fighting health issues for a long time, and that was a heartbreaking moment. Probably one of the toughest things I've had to go through. Yeah. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's the one love that is unconditional, in my opinion, is that from your mother. I would even argue that your father wouldn't even give you unconditional love. Yeah. So going through the process of grief, you know,
still dealing with it. You know, my mother had a quote. She said to us in 2020, I remember we were in load shedding. We were in lockdown, and she said, "My boys, fundan, sebenzan, nizmele." That means study, work, and stand on your own 2 feet. Those are the words she spoke to us. And after grieving and being in a space of, you know, sadness, I realized, and, you know, after chatting to family, that she served that purpose. You know, she got us to an age where we studied, we were on our way to working, and all 3 of us are months, a few years away from standing on our own 2 feet. And as tough as it was to accept the loss of my mother, as tough as it still is, I know that her purpose was fulfilled on earth. Her prayer in 2010 was, "God, allow me to raise my children." 12 years later, her firstborn is working a full-time job, taking care of himself. Secondborn is months away from being independent. Thirdborn, a year or 2 away from standing on their own 2 feet. And as tough as it was to accept the loss, her purpose was fulfilled. And that's what we believe as Christians as well, is that, you know, when God takes you, it's your time, and it's a sign that your work on earth is done. And her job on earth was to grow us up, and she did that. Did that make the grieving process easier? No, it didn't. Many days, many hours of tears that no one sees. You know, she wanted to be around for a long time. She wanted to see our kids grow, and, you know, she didn't have that opportunity. But we believe she walks with us still. You know, we believe that she's watching over us, and, you know, we believe that she's guiding us. So it's been a tough journey, one I wish for not many people to go through, especially at the age we were going through it with. And I want to just say to people that have lost parents in their lives that as tough as it has been, we now live for them, and we now continue the road that they've left for us to continue. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I want to do this. But to people that have lost parents in their lives, I want to chat to Kian Turner, a friend of mine that went to St. Peter's. I know you've lost your mother, my brother, but she still walks with you. She still cares about you. She's still there for you. I want to chat to the Lawrence family. Kopana, you know them as well. Robbie Lawrence, Nicola Lawrence, Roxanne Lawrence. You guys have lost your father recently. I relate to that experience and know that he walks with you. I want to chat to Josiah, Chipo, Musepo. Also lost his father recently. I want to let you know that he walks with you and that he's with you. It's our job now as people who've lost parents to continue the journey they would have wanted us to continue. Because we became their purpose on earth. We were the reason why they were on earth. To see our success. And if we don't continue the road that they've paved, it's not an act of honor on their part. And my role and my job is to honor my mother and to give her the life that she fought so hard to give me. I remember going to church on Sundays and seeing my mom wear like the same clothes for years. I always think to myself, like, why is she wearing the same clothes? But deep down I knew that every cent she gave was to supporting us. She made the decision to take me to Hilton and to take all of us to private schools and to give us the life we wanted. And she believed in us so much. And it's our job, it's our obligation, it's our mandate to keep that going for her. To keep her quote alive. Fundani sebenzani izimele. Let us stand on our own 2 feet for her. So, tough thing to digest. But I feel like when you lose someone that close, you grow. You grow. And I'm grateful for the growth. So, yeah, man.
Yeah. Yo, I sit in silence today because I think it's unfathomable the amount of strength needed to be able to go through such a process. I don't think, especially if you haven't experienced it, you can truly ever empathize, sympathize, or understand, the pain that goes with losing unconditional love. Because we live in a world today where it's conditional. I'm here for specific reasons. I'm not just here because you are who you are. And wherever she is today, I think, and I hope and I pray that she's indeed looking over you in the journey of life and proud of the man that you are becoming.
Thank you, man. Yeah. She still walks with us. I like to believe so. And I know I'll see her again one day, man. I know I'll see her again one day.
Well, to I guess close that topic, I wanted you to suppose just if you were to say something to her in light of speaking, would you say anything to her right now, if you could?
Yakuthanda, ma. Yakuthanda. Thank you for believing in me. Because in this world, not many people do. And that woman believed in her boys, She loved us so much. Thanks for believing in me, Mom. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not only a privilege, but it's an honor to have people like you here at S'bonelo. And I think that just to end off, I wanted to speak about a reflection on the life that you've lived, and I suppose more so just the generational curses that you're trying to unwind. They speak about it on, I think it's the Grand Myth podcast.
Yeah.
He spoke about this idea of generational curses, and one interesting stat that he said is that if a parent commits suicide, the children are 2.5 times more likely to follow suit. And, you know, in light of what has happened last year, and I suppose we didn't really speak about the successes, but maybe we might get back to that another day. You know, and what are the generational curses? Firstly, what is it in theory, a generational curse? And further to that is, how do you plan on modeling the life that breaks generational curses?
Sure. You know, generational curses are, you know, results of either external factors or internal factors that have limited or restricted the growth of generations of families or a generation of a particular family. And we see that through poverty and, you know, contextually, the suppression of black people. You know, the remnants of apartheid are still living today, and a lot of people are still recovering from that. And generationally, the curse, so to speak, is that financial restriction, the trauma from, you know, going through those types of experiences of apartheid, of, you know, being beat, being segregated. Those are curses. And sort of the process of breaking that, and what I've learned from breaking that, is it takes one person to make a decision to shoot up the trajectory of the family. For me, that was my mom, you know, my mother, and, you know, my dad as well. He definitely contributed to that mission as well. I don't want to discredit him at all. But it takes one person to say that we need to change the trajectory of where this family's going, financially, emotionally, spiritually, etc. It takes one person to make that decision. And two pragmatic, sort of practical points I've learned is that in order to get yourself into a place you've never been, you need to go to places you've never been. Grant speaks about putting yourself in a different environment where the patterns of thought are different to those in which you come from. So if you come from a background that has a scarcity mindset, or a mindset that nothing can be achieved, that we're stuck here, you will succumb to and inform in that type of thinking. But if you say to yourself, I need to remove myself, so you move yourself from the background, and you get yourself into a background where you can succeed. Again, just to relate to my mother, she did that through my experience at Hilton. She understood far before I could that just being in this environment would assist my success. And she removed me from, you know, previous environments and allowed that process to be possible. The second point is to execute in those environments. You'd put in, and that's where the whole purpose then came from for me and going to that school, because I understood that I had an obligation to perform. I had an obligation to stand and stand proud and perform so that I can be able to execute and start to create a better life for my family. Making the decision, changing the direction, getting to yourself into a particular environment, and executing in that environment. Those are some of the keys and the points in achieving or breaking those generational curses. And man, we might not have lived through apartheid, but we experience its consequences today. And I
100%.
think it's safe to say that, you know, we experience those things as black individuals. We speak and we laugh about things like black tax and all that type of stuff, but those are real things that us individuals go through. And I think we've got a mandate to change the trajectory of our families. And some of those points I've mentioned are good ways to get there.
Sure.
So get yourself into a better environment, execute in that environment, and bring credibility to your name so that people are willing to listen and follow your direction.
100%.
Sheesh. So I'm grateful for both of our parents because they understood that from an early age. They understood the power of being in spaces, not necessarily executing at the high. I mean, execution is important, as I've mentioned, but they understood the power of just being in the right place. And I think both of our parents have given us that. It wasn't an easy experience. I almost got kicked out of school, actually, in grade 9. Sorry, I'm backtracking. I almost got kicked out of school because of financial issues. I remember getting emails from the school saying, we're going to take this kid out beginning of term 2 because we don't have money. I remember us praying at home about a solution. My mom said, you've got to drive to Hilton tomorrow morning and talk to these people. It's during the holidays. Me and my dad, we drive to Hilton. I get there in my number ones. I'm sitting in the reception area and I'm like debating my future here because I've worked so hard to get here. My dad walks with the bursar into the private room and having conversations, about how he can keep me here. Eventually, news breaks out that, I could be leaving. I think I had a conversation or two at the dorm, actually, telling them that, guys, I don't know how long I'm going to be here for. One day my parents get a call from Mr. Fairweather. He was head of marketing at the time. He says, we'd like to inform you that someone wants to fund my tuition for my entire time there, keep me there, which was a blessing, man, because I thought it was over. But despite those challenges, those financial challenges, my parents knew they couldn't afford, but they understood that more than anything, keeping this person in this environment is important. And I'll not quickly say that irrelevant of whether you went to these schools or not, understand that it's possible to break free. You must just acquire the wisdom that needs to be acquired to break free and to put your children in positions where they can break free for themselves. So my parents understood it from a young age, and I walk with that today, So yeah, man.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's incredible, and I guess it is a great place to end today. As I always say, I really do thoroughly enjoy our conversations, and I think in many ways I've struggled to find my people. 2022, 2023, hopefully 2023 I'll find my people, but in many ways I've struggled. But what's inspirational is that I still have my people. If that makes sense,
Most definitely.
And the amount of growth and the amount that I learned here is beyond. The adversity that you've gone through in your life, and where you are today, and where you continue to push to one day to become the real OG Disney boy.
Come
For
on.
me is a beautiful thing, and the way you live your life is remarkable. And I think in many ways, I think you're a bit older for your age.
I feel 89.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to appreciate you coming on. We definitely want to have another pod with you again.
Most definitely.
Maybe we'll do another one later on in the year. But I want to say thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge, sharing some of your stories, revealing some of your pains, but most importantly, giving us yet another perspective.